Okay, cool. Did you guys see the thing on Discord and did you guys download the asset pack? Because we're going to be using that. So if you have not yet, there's a link in Discord for that asset pack. So we're going to be running over an engine called Construct 3. It's visual-based coding, so it's more like Block, kind of like Scratch. So it's a little bit easier to pick up instead of just having to jump into Unity and use all that hard code stuff. So I'm going to show you a preview of the little project that I built here inside the editor. And this is what it's going to look like by the time we are done, hopefully. You have a little character around that runs with a sword. You can slash stuff. You can go up and kill enemies, take damage, and then the door will open and you can progress to new screens. So it's a very basic setup. It's designed so that you guys can have a lot of freedom to kind of build how you want it. I kind of set up a base and then you guys can kind of edit that and get better. So I am going to start a new project up here so that we can all start from scratch. So right off the bat, if you guys will get into the Construct 3 editor, you can go to it from Google by just literally searching up Construct 3 download or whatever. And usually this will pop up and you can just click that and it'll take you right to this editor. And then once you're there, we are going to create a new file and name it whatever you want. So once this is up here, I'm going to open my other project real quick. Alrighty. Okay, so once you're in this up here, it's going to be an empty layout one. It's going to look like a big black blank screen. What we want to do right off the bat is we want to go down to here to this editor thing on the side. And I want to hit the show grid and the snap to grid boxes. So you kind of just get this gridded pattern all over the whole thing. And then for the purposes of ease of this thing, we're going to set the grid size to 16 by 16 because that's going to help us out quite a bit. And then after we do that, we're going to go inside this thing here, which is the project properties. You're going to hit this view button and we're going to set the overall size of our viewport. So down in the display, we're going to set this to be 160 by 160. And then we're also going to click out of this and set this thing to 160 by 160. This is just going to set up a basic box for us to work in. Nice little box here. So that you can see now if I run this, it's just going to be a big blank screen that we can see the whole screen here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add an image or a sprite as it's called in Construct 2 or 3. So you can either right click or you can double tap. So I will right click. I'm going to say insert new object. You can scroll through this whole list or you can just search for a sprite. It's going to look up like this little alien thing like in Galaga. We're just going to name this sprite the player. Yes. So this brings up a little window. This is the sprite editor, which is basically just how you import, touch up, do all these cool things with sprites. So inside here, this is where we're going to use your asset pack that you downloaded. You're going to go up to the load images from files button up here. And you're going to want to navigate to this folder with all the asset stuff in it. I'll give you guys just a little minute to check all that out. Try to get to this thing right here. We're going to want to be in the Heroes project file. So I'm going to click into this with the knight here. And then all these things saying idle animation, we're going to want to put those in. So just selecting all of these and you can click open. Is everyone pretty good with that? Okay, so yeah, this is going to import little frame by frame. You can zoom up with the plus button up here, or you can just straight up zoom. You're going to have little animations through this whole thing of the guy's idle. So we're fine calling this animation 1. You can rename this to be whatever you want, but we're just going to keep this at animation 1 for now. If you click on it, the button up here is going to pull up all these things down here. What we want this to do, since it's an idle animation and it could be running forever, we're going to click this loop box so that it doesn't stop. You can set the speed to however much you personally want, but we're going to keep it at 5 for right now. And this button up here is going to let you preview your animation. So if it's not looping, it's not going to keep doing this, it's just going to do it once. So we got all that very nicely. So once you have this, we're going to double tap or right click over here to click add animation, because we want now him to have a move animation as well as just an idle. And I'm just going to get this blank thing, that's fine. We're just going to go back up here to the button, and we're going to find the run animation from our asset pack here. And we're just going to open all that. So now you have all these frames down here like normal. Ooh. Nice little running animation. And we are going to click this button up here and set that to loop as well. 5 is fine for the speed. And so yeah, we have a basic animations for our guy. So if we hit run on this, you can see he's got a little run animation. And so now we're going to make something for the future for his weapon. If you take this little scroll bar and you scroll down, you can get to this little thing called edit the image points. And we're going to go over here and right click and say add a new image point. Image point 1 is fine. It's going to show up like this on your character. You can use the arrow keys to move it around. We're just going to set this image point to be like 13.9. It doesn't matter super much, but 13.9 roughly. And then you're going to right click over here and we're just going to say apply that to the whole animation. So now every time we go through an animation, we have this little point right here. This is just a reference point for his weapon that we're going to add in the future. It doesn't super much matter if you grasp this like super well. This is kind of just like advanced stuff, but we're just going to make it like this at the start. There's easier ways and harder ways to do this. We're going to do the same thing over here by adding an image point, and we're going to move it to 13.9 and then apply that to the whole animation. Okay, so if we click X, it's going to save all of our changes and it's going to give us this little character here, which is why we put on that snap to grid and that show grid, so that we can kind of just like keep everything in a very gridded box so you don't have to mess with stuff. Like if you turn this off, the snap to the grid, now we get like decimal points for values, and that's just kind of difficult to work with. So we're just going to keep that like this. Alright, so the cool thing about Construct 3 is that you can add a lot of functions and like moving pieces to your game with very little effort. So if you click on the character here, you have all this cool stuff next to them. We're going to go down to this behaviors button. Behaviors is a super cool thing in Construct 3, add new behavior, that allows you to get all these super cool things. It doesn't matter if you understand them all right now. They're pretty self-explanatory for the most part. But I just want you guys to click 8 direction on this. This is going to allow him to basically move up, down, left, right, and diagonally on the screen without you having to add any code. So yeah, once he has the 8 direction, you can literally just run this now with the little button up there, and he's not quite perfect, but he already moves around the screen without any code. So in order to fix his kind of weirdness, we're just going to set his max speed a little bit lower. I mean, personally, this is all your choice, but we're going to set his max speed down and his acceleration like really high, so he kind of just stops and starts instantly. And then we don't want an angle here. No. no set angle. And then this here is your preference. If you wanted to only move up, down, left, right, no diagonals, just pick 4. I'm going to keep it at 8 for right now. So if I ran this now, since he's not moving, we got this guy that moves around the screen. And if you look closely, he's already playing his animation. Alright, cool. Right off the bat, we're also really good. Does everyone see this layers bar in some place on their screen? Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to right click and we're going to add a layer at bottom. That's all super annoying, but it's misconfused that way. We're going to call it layer 1. It's fine. We'll just, yeah, keep it that way. That's kind of confusing, but whatever. Layer 1. So we got this guy and we're going to change him. Yeah, we got him all. Okay, cool. Right click. We're going to add a new object. This is where the fun stuff happens. Now you search tile map. This is going to basically allow you to create grid space boxes everywhere that like create your level. This is the coolest part about Construct 3 in my opinion. And a lot of editors have this, but not as cool as this one. So yeah, we're going to click the button up here to change the tile map. This is the default one. We don't really want that. We're going to go back to our file and we're going to go into this base here and click the tiles folder. And then we're going to go to the, oh shoot, this is not the right one. So sorry, go back out here. We're going to go to full tile map. Open that. It's going to give you this cool little thing here with a lot of different 16 by 16 spaces. And we're just going to click X. It'll show up down here if you have tile map bar open. If you do not see this tile map, you can go up to the menu, you can go to view, you can go to bars, and it's going to have all the bars here. So say for instance we wanted this, it's going to complain at me, but you're going to have an option too. But you click the bars and you click this tile map bar and it'll show up and you can position it on your screen. So we're going to go to this tile map. I'm just going to rename it to keep it kind of organized. We're going to call this layer 0. And in the properties over here for layer 0, we are going to go down to this tile width, tile height, and set that to 16 and 16. So now, if you would like zoom up down here, I'm going to move all this stuff up a little bit so you can see better. We have little boxes around all these objects, which is super cool. So if you clicked the edit button, this little pen button here, and you clicked one of these, and you brought it onto the screen, you would be able to see what's going on here. I'm going to move that up there. So sorry, yeah, we're going to move layer 1 up here above layer 0. So just drag and drop. So put layer 1 above layer 0. So yeah, so if you have this pen, you can draw all over the place. I'm not going to do that, but yeah. So for the start here, we're going to, this is the delete by the way. We're going to take this button here and we're going to draw a floor over the whole level. Keep in mind here, I'm going to change, the player, his layer, up to layer 1. Okay. So yeah, we're gonna draw this tile over the whole level. This is just gonna be like the base floor tile. You can make it as crazy as you want. There's a lot of tiles to pick from, but it's going to be our floor. You can, you know, obviously throw in dash of really whatever you want. And then we're going to create a walls tile map at the same time so that we can get walls on this thing. So I'm going to right click on this layer 0 in the project and I'm going to hit clone. So now we have layer 0 and layer 1. So I'm going to take layer 1 and I'm going to drag it onto the screen here. You can do this with any object. And we're just going to delete all the tiles from this because it copied everything from the previous one. So delete, delete, delete. Cool. And then if you click this little button here, it'll take you back out of the editor. So now that we've got this, I'm going to drag it onto the screen here so that it kind of fits right over the other tile map that we had. So now we have layer 0 and layer 1. So it's kind of a layering effect on this thing. So that if we put layer 1 stuff on here with this button, the edit button here, we picked a wall, we can now stick this on top of here and we can create walls without kind of disrupting the other stuff. You can make this fairly simple or fairly complex. I'm going to use these little edges down here to kind of create some cool effects. We're going to click this edge here, and we're going to set it to flipped. We're going to flip it upside down on this tile right here. And now that we have this, we can stick it on top of this. But since it's on layer 1, it's going to delete. We don't really like that. That's why we're kind of doing this layer thing. So if you pick this layer 0, you can now stick wall tiles underneath. We're going to stick it like this. So we kind of have this upside down wall look on us. Cool, cool, cool. So we're going to go back to over here to the layer 1, and you're going to stick a wall, this edge wall. We're going to edit, flip it upside down, stick it over here. Go to the other side, flip it upside down, stick it over there. Cool, cool. So you're kind of just going to be able to create this however you want. You don't have to create it the way I'm creating it. You can pretty much go crazy with your level creation. I'm going to stick with this for simplicity. You can make as complex as you want, doesn't matter at all. So if we ran this now, you see that it just kind of, you know, the walls don't do anything, they don't hide, they're just kind of there. So we're going to add so the player can't walk through them because they're walls. You're not supposed to walk through walls. So we're going to create a new object, right click, insert new object. And you're going to look up sprite, and we're just going to name this wall collider. Now we got an empty screen here. I want you to go up to this little resize button here. Resize to 16 by 16, just so we're keeping it consistent. And then you could keep this blank because you're not actually going to be able to see this sprite on the screen when we're done with it. But we're going to go over to the paint bucket tool down in the editor. Pick any color you want, doesn't matter at all. I'll pick this. And then we just want to drop the alpha of it, maybe like 100. And then I tap that and it's just going to look like this, and we're just going to say, okay, that's cool. So now we've got this little block here. And for making this simpler, let's click on it and go to the origin point thing here, like we did in the player. And we're just going to set this origin point down to the corner. So it's going to work easier in our grid. So now it just moves around that point instead, and it'll align up with our boxes quite a bit easier. So another cool thing in behaviors, we're going to go over here. If you click on this sprite, go to the behaviors, and we're going to say add new behavior. Guess what? It's called solid, impassable, can't walk through it. So if we took this thing and we just kind of like dragged it over the whole set of walls, copy and paste, So it looks like this. This is why we set that alpha down to 0, so you can kind of still see what's behind it. Otherwise, it would just kind of obscure whatever's behind it. So now that we have all of this, we're going to go up to our wall collider thing here. And we're going to click through all this stuff down at the very bottom. Initially, it's supposed to say visible. And declick that box, because we don't want this thing to show up. So now that we have all that, if we ran this, you can see that we don't see that sprite. But now if we try to walk through a wall, we're just stuck. So yay, we got walls to work. This kind of is like the basis of a lot of construct things. If you put solid on something, you will be able to platform, you'll be able to not walk through. Anything you want to be ground is going to have solid on it. Okay, very, very cool. So now we're going to get into a little bit more of the cool stuff. We're going to go to the event sheet. That's the wrong one. Here it is. This is basically the code for all of your construct program. I'm going to click add event just so you can see what this looks like. Now, events are actions that you can do on a certain object. Events, for example, if you clicked this player here, he has all these different events that are pre-picked already that you can kind of just select to edit stuff. So like compare his X position. Is he on the screen? You know, if he has a variable attached to him, let's check it. Let's pick the highest, you know. All these preset things, so you don't have to know how to code. So we're just going to go to the compare speed on this 8 direction little sub tab here. If you collect that, next, we're going to say if it's equal to 0, kind of just keep it like that, great. Now, 8 direction speed equals 0. We're going to hit add an action. So when this thing is true, we're going to do whatever is attached to it. So we're going to click that player, and we're going to go into his animation. So we're going to set his animation. And then it takes a string literal, so if you use a quote, it'll open this thing up for you. And we're going to say animation 1, because that was his idle animation. This is kind of why renaming stuff helps. We click done. Great. So now whenever his speed is 0, he's going to be playing his idle animation. Let's copy and paste this piece of code here and go back into this. Now let's say when his speed is not equal to 0. Now we're going to set his animation to animation 2. Great. And run. So now as you can see, he's going to sit here, but then as soon as you move, you're going to have a cool little rocking animation. As soon as you stop, he's going to have his little idle animation. Nice. Okay, so you saw that when we were moving left, we kind of want to be facing left. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click here, and we're going to say include or add global variable. This isn't kind of the same thing as normal code. This is just kind of a variable that you'll be able to use throughout your project. We're going to call this player angle. We're going to keep it at number equals 0. Cool. So that's going to help us out here. Go back to this layout one, and we're going to add a new item. Double tap or right click. Keyboard. This is going to basically allow you to use your keyboard in your project instead of having to import a whole bunch of stuff. Added the keyboard, you can see now it's over here. This is just kind of something that is not really in your project, but just allows you to access keyboard events. So we're going to go back over to our event sheet, add event here to the keyboard. So we're going to say key is down. Check if a key is down. We're going to say right arrow. You can do that by just simply tapping the right arrow when it has this up. Right arrow down. Cool. So now when our right arrow is down, we're going to add a new action. And if you want to access any variable like we're going to try to do right now, we're going to go into the system. So we're going to set the value of a variable, global and local variables, set a value of this player angle to 0. the way that angles work in construct 2 is this way is 0, this way is 180. And so you're going to have to just kind of calculate. It doesn't go to 360, it only goes to 180. So now we're going to copy and paste this code to say if the left arrow is down. And now, as you might imagine, we're going to set his angle to 180. Cool. But that doesn't really do anything yet. So we're going to say right arrow is down, add an action to the player. Player, we're going to, where is it? Set mirrored. You can kind of just tap up in this thing if you can't quite find something. It's under appearance, it's called set mirrored. So when he's going right, he's not going to be mirrored. And we're going to copy this piece of code here to the other side, and when he's going left, he will be mirrored. This player angle is going to help us later in the project, just so you know. Okay, so now if we ran our program, you can see, oh yeah, he turns around. We're not going to really deal with up and down because that gets really, really complicated right at the bat, so we're just going to leave it like this. Great, we have a character that can now move around the screen, glide in walls, and is animated. Very, very awesome. So next thing up, we're going to add a weapon for our character. So we're going to double click here or right click, go to sprite, and we're going to name this the sword. And we're going to click there. So go up to your load images from files. We're going to go back to our asset thing here. And I believe it's in heroes. Might be wrong, but let's see. Weapon sword all the way at the bottom. So we're going to open that. Zoom up on this a bit. Very cool. And we're going to do kind of the same thing we did with the player here. We're going to add an image point. Image point 1. So we're going to move this thing down to the hilt of the sword because that's where we want this thing to be held at. Down there at the bottom at 213. And we don't need to care about this because we don't have any animations for our sword. So, X. Great, we got the sword in the project. But now we're actually going to do something weird. We're just going to delete it with a backspace. This deletes the last sword instance, but it doesn't remove it from your project, as that thing says. You can see it's now up here in our project folder, sword. So this is just so that whenever you create a new level, you don't have to keep, manually putting the sword on your player all the time. And so the sword sticks on your player. If we select it up here in the project folder, we can go to the behaviors, add a new behavior, and we're going to say pin. This is going to allow the sword to basically stick to the player so that when he moves, it moves with him. Okay, so I'm going to close that real quick. Go to our event sheet up here, and we're going to add an event from the system. Search up on start of layouts. This is going to trigger as soon as your layout starts up. And we're going to add an action to that, and we're going to make our sword stick to the player. So we're going to, where is it? Pin to object. And now it's going to ask you which one do you want to pin it to, and we're going to say we want it to pin it to the player. Add its X, add its Y. We don't want to pin the angle because that's just not good. So we're going to say done. And now to make the sword appear in our project, we're going to say sword, or not sword, sorry, system, create object. This is going to basically create anything from your project at certain X and Y coordinates. So we're going to create our sword for our player. Layer, if you hit the double quotes again, it'll pick your layers for you. We want that at layer 1. Now X, it's going to ask you for the X coordinate you want it to be put at. So what we want to do here is we want to create it at that image point that we set on that player, because that's where we want him to hold the sword. So kind of just follow with me here. It's okay if you don't really know how to do this yet. It's called player to access the player bot, the player guy. Dot, kind of like in code, to access a method. And we're going to go image point X, because this is the X value. And then we're going to pass in which image point, and it was the number 1 image point. And we're going to do the same thing for the Y, player dot image point Y down here. And it was that first image point. Done. So it does that. We're going to push that above this so it creates it and then pins it. And let's see what happens. Cool. So now it just kind of moves around with him. Alrighty. This can take some finagling to get used to. You might have to move the image points around and such like that. Yeah, did I put that? This is, okay, yeah. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to add an event so that you can attack with the sword. So we're going to add an event to the keyboard so that when you press a button, and we're going to pick on key pressed. Now we're going to click, this is whatever key you want it to be, doesn't matter. I'm going to say spacebar. Spacebar. So now whenever we click the spacebar, we want to attack with our player. So let me see what I did for this here. Okay, so we want to check now. So this is, so I want to add another condition to this thing here. If you double click on this little arrow outside the keyboard thing, it's going to add another condition for you. We're going to check the system, and this is where that player angle thing is going to come in. We're going to compare a variable, and we're going to see if our player angle is 0, or in this case, if our player is facing right. Cool. So now we want to add an action to our sword, because we're going to rotate the sword to look like it swung, and we want to know which way you're swinging because we're going to rotate a different direction. So rotate clockwise if he's facing right to look like it swung down, and we're going to rotate it at 90. It's kind of just like goes from this to that, so it look like it swung. And then we'll just say after that, system in the actions, wait. This is a cool little thing that it basically allows you to wait a couple seconds before executing this next line of code. We'll just say, I want you to wait 0.2 seconds. And then we're going to copy and paste this thing here, and then we're going to rotate it back to how it was. So we're going to, back here, back. We're going to rotate it counterclockwise to undo it, 90 degrees. So if we tried running this, we'll see now that if we hit space, yay, it looks like he's slashing now. Albeit the animation is kind of funky, but it's kind of like raising his hand like that. But you'll notice if we're facing this way, it doesn't work because we don't yet have something to accept for that. So we're going to go down here. We're going to copy and paste this piece of code to make the player angle equaling 180. So if he's flipped the other way. So now we're going to rotate, instead of clockwise, we're going to rotate counterclockwise, 90. And then down here, we're going to rotate clockwise, 90. Going up to here. Now if we hit space this way, he's going to slash. And this way, he's also going to slash. Granted, the pin doesn't quite work yet. Very, very cool. Something to know if you want to kind of, if you're an organized person and this kind of drives you insane, you can double click, right click down here and add a group. So I'm going to do it just for the sake of showing you guys how to do it. We'll just call this the weapon group. This does add an event because in Construct 3 you only have a certain number of events. If you don't care about this as much, then don't do it. But it's just kind of a nice organizer tool. So we're gonna click both of these and just stick them inside the weapon. Very cool. You can do this as much as you want. I'm only gonna do it once just to show you guys how to do it. But if you want to organize your code, this is a better way to do it. If you collapse this, it'll just kind of like pop down like that. Okay. So now we can kind of run around and do cool stuff. So no game is fun without enemies. So we're going to create one very simple enemy type. Right click, insert new object. Sprite. This is kind of the same thing. This is going to be how it is if you ever want to add something to your project. And we're going to call this the enemy. And we're going to click down there. Cool. We're going to go up to the load images. Back from the heroes, back from the dungeon. And the enemies folder here. Now you can pick whichever one you want, but for me, I'm going to do the slime. And kind of like how we did with the hero, we're just going to pick all these idle animations. If we open them all up, we got this nice thing here. And kind of like the same thing, we'll click this thing up here and we can loop it because he's going to be doing this for a while. So we can make sure this works. Kind of cute little guy moving around like that. And yeah, so let's X that so we have an enemy now in our project. So you can kind of move him around, do whatever you want with him. We want the enemy to move, right? So what do you think would be good? Well, behaviors. Makes everything so much easier. We're going to go down to this behaviors thing for this sprite. Add a new behavior for sign. This is basically going to make it move back and forth or up and down. Kind of, you can go as crazy as you want with it. Because for us, we just want it to go left and right. Just kind of a normal moving character. So if you have sign on him, now he's going to have common stuff, instance behaviors. Now he's going to have this thing called sign under him. We want his movement horizontal. Wave sign is fine. This is going to be how long he takes to go, however far you want to make him go. We'll just call this 32 and this, I don't know, 5. It doesn't really matter. Pick whatever you want. So let's see if it works. Click this button here. Yay, he's moving left and right. Very simple enemy type. You can move straight through him still, but that's all cool. Alrighty, so we're going to give him a health bar because enemies need health. So we're going to want to create a variable, but since we want this variable to be specific to each character that we create, it's going to be an instance variable, which is kind of just like something only attached to this character. So we're going to click instance variables, add new instance variable, and we're going to call this health. Create however much health you want, and if you want this to be a Giga Boss slime, create it crazy. But we're going to go with just 3, and we're going to X out. So now we have this little health variable down here with the value 3 attached to it. Okay, so now we want to be able to damage our slime. So under our weapon, let's click add event to the weapon, and we're going to say sword on collision with another object, or is overlapping. We can do either one. We'll just pick overlapping. Now it's going to pick which one you want to overlap with, and if we're overlapping our enemy. Done. So this is going to check if our sword at any time is touching our enemy. And if it is, we're going to take away 1 from the enemy's health. So we're going to go down to instance variables. We're going to subtract from, and then this is where your variables show up. If you had more than 1, it would show there. We're going to subtract 1 from his health. So you got this nice little thing here. But this is going to like happen like infinitely times in 1 second, so you're probably just going to like touch him, he's going to die instantly. So we want to make sure this only runs once when it happens. So we're going to double tap here, and we'll go to the system, and we're going to say just searching up trigger once while it's true. Nice. So let's see if that worked. Well, shoot, I forgot to do something. I mean, he probably is editing the value, but we can't quite see it yet. So we'll go down here and select add event at the bottom because we don't necessarily want this in the weapon area. We're going to say enemy. We're going to see if your health is 0. Compare instance variable. Health number is less than or equal to 0. If that is true, then we just want the enemy to explode or die, whatever you want to call it. You can create some cool stuff, but we're going to say destroy. And cool. So now let's see if that works. We're going to go up here, run into him. Oh, we killed him. Let's go. So now we can kill enemies. Nice. And kind of getting close here, we're going to create lots of enemies. So just copy and paste this guy, click somewhere else. I don't know, put him down here. Copy, paste this guy. We got lots of enemies all over the place. These guys will all have their own stuff. So if you want to change their sine wave, or you want to see how far they move, or change how fast they are, like this guy could go 2 to be way faster. These guys are all going to be enemies. So I don't know if this is going to be cool with you guys, but we're just going to say if the player defeats all the enemies in this room, then he's good to move on to the next room. So let's go in here and create a variable holding all the numbers of enemies in our room. So since this is going to be active over our whole project, we can just create a new global variable. So we're going to right click or double tap and add global variable. We're going to call this enemy count, and we're going to set that to 0 for right now. So enemy count equals 0. Then what we want to do is we want to create an event down here to check every time an enemy is on the screen. We're going to add one to that variable. So we're going to say enemy on created down here in the miscellaneous, or you can just type it out, on created. So this is every time this enemy gets created, which is going to be once for every enemy. We're going to add an action, system, and we're going to, in our global variables, we're going to add to the enemy count 1. So for each enemy that's on our screen, we're going to add 1 to our enemy count. Now keep in mind, if you did want to look at all these variables, there is a debug option. That is cool too, but right now we're just going to leave it how it is. Okay, so we want to now create like a doorway or something for our character to move through if he is done. So let's create a new sprite, double tap or right click, go to sprite, and we're going to call this door. Click down there. We're going to go up to the load images from files and get out of this, get out of this. We're going to go back to our thing here, and I think it might be in this one, somewhere in here at the bottom. Maybe not. Maybe in tiles? There it is. It's in tiles. And we're going to do door closed. Open that, and we get this cool little sprite here with a lock on it. So now we want to create an animation for it to be opening. So if we right click, double tap up here, we're going to say add another animation. And now we're going to load images from our file. And we're going to go to this door opening. Is that the start of it? There we go. Opening. open that up. And now we've got all of our sprites here. If we run this to see what it looks like, it's going to open like that. But as you see, it has like these weird little still the smoke marks. So we just want to create like an empty frame there so that it doesn't have smoke marks. So let's go to this. Let's right click on it and duplicate. So it's got like this, and we'll go to our pen here. Alpha at 0, so we're basically just going to delete or erase, or you can click this eraser up here. But we have alpha at 0, you're going to have like this cool little like thing here. Let's just like tap once to get rid of it. So now it goes from this to just an open frame. Cool, cool, cool. So we got our doorway now. Let's drag it on. You can put it pretty much wherever you want. And we only want this doorway to open when all the enemies in our screen have died. So we're going to say, adding an event down here, compare instance variable, or compare global, down here. And we're going to see if our enemy count is equal to 0. No enemies left on the screen. If that is the case, we're going to go to our door, and we're going to set its animation to that animation 2, so that it looks like it's opening. Cool. So let's see if that worked. Go back up here. This guy's moving crazy. Kill him. Kill him. Kill him. Uh-oh, we're not working. So let's see what went wrong. Oh, okay, yeah, there we go. Yeah, you got it, thank you. Okay, so yeah, on our health is when we kill the enemy here, I just forgot to decrease the enemy count. So we're gonna go to that system, and we're going to subtract from our enemy count 1. Yep, that was right there. So let's see if we are working now. Kill all guys. There we go, and the doorway opens up. Of course, we don't want that to keep happening because it's still opening up, so we're going to go down to here, and we're going to double tap for the system to make it only happen once, which was the trigger once while true thing down here on the special conditions. Cool, so now our doorway opens up when all of our enemies are gone. So we're going to make it so that you can create new levels in case you want to do that. So it's going to be up here in our project little folder, and you can go to the layouts thing up here. You can either copy this layout, which I'm going to do, or you can just create a new one. You just copy paste. Now you've got this layout too. If we double tap that, it's just going to show up right here. Alrighty, so we're going to see if we walk through our door, we're just going to go to that second level. So we're going to say, adding an event, if the player here is overlapping another object, and we're going to say our doorway, because that's the one we want. But we want to make sure that he can actually still walk through it instead of just like straight up walking through it when there's still enemies on the screen. So we're going to hit the system, and we're going to compare a variable. And we're going to say, yeah, enemy count equals 0. So if he's overlapping the door when there are no enemies in the screen, we're just going to go to the next layout. So we can go into here, and we can scroll down to go to layout. There's a whole bunch of options here. We can just go to the next or the previous one. So we'll just say go to next, which is just going to pick the next one on your list here, depending on where you are. Done. So let's see what happens. If we kill all our enemies and then we walk through our door. Yay, we killed them all. And let's see. Our doorway is only opening once. And we went to our second layout. It does look all the same because we didn't edit anything, but yeah, we are in our second layout now. So that's all the super basics about it. I didn't realize I wouldn't have enough time to like get all the stuff to work out super well. Like our sword doesn't work all that great. It is a little finagling to get it to work. But we have a basic setup here, and we want to create health as our last thing we're going to do. So let's double tap here to create a sprite. We're going to name this health_UI and click there. We're going to load images from our files, and let's go out of here to UI stuff. Open that, and we're going to go to health UI here, and we zoom up on that, see what that looks like. This little bar right here. So here's where the cool stuff I learned while doing this happens. If we use the color eyedropper tool here and we select the color of this heart, you get this nice thing here, and then we're going to hit that paint bucket and we're going to fill in each of the bars so that we have a cool full meter. And then if we go over here and we rename this, rename that to 4 because we have 4 health left. That's going to come in later in play. Let's copy this one and do it for each other thing. So we're going to rename this to 3, and as you might imagine, we're going to take our eraser, set the size down to 2, and then we can just erase here, or you can hit the paint bucket, set one of these colors by tapping them to change, set this alpha to 0, and then we're just going to pop it like that. Okay, let's keep going down the list. Duplicate this, rename it to 2 for 2 health remaining, because you went 4, 3. Now we're going to do this one. We're going to delete this. We're going to keep going down the list. Rename this to 1, 2, 1 health. Take that one out. Duplicate that, and we're going to rename this one 0. No health left. So now we got 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0 health. Cool. Let's drag this up near the top of our screen so it kind of looks like a normal health bar. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make this thing work. Let's go into our event sheet and let's create a new event. We're going to, or right before that, we need to create a variable for our player's health. So we'll add a global variable. We're going to name it player health. And since we had 4 bars on our thing, we're going to make that 4. So now we're going to say, adding an event for the player. If the player collided with another object, in this case we're going to see if we collide with the enemy. Enemy here. If we collided with our enemy, then we're going to subtract 1 from his health. So we're going to go to the system because it's global, not attached to the player. We're going to go into the system and we're going to subtract from our player health 1. Great. So now we want to update our UI. So we're going to add an event to the system to check all the time, which is the every tick thing here in the general. I'm going to say next, every tick, we want to do some cool stuff with the health. So we're going to select the health, set the animation. So since we have our animation set to 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0, we're going to just set it to our player health variable. Player health. But since this thing is only going to want a string, not a number, we're just going to do str, cast that to a string. String player health, done. Every tick. So it's going to update all the time our player's health. Let's see if we got it right. I'm going to run into this guy. And look at that. No more health. We can keep running into people until we die, but nothing is going to happen because, well, yeah. This is where this sword is kind of annoying, being stuck right to you, because you're basically going to have to suicide bomber people. But we can fix that. We're just going to say in our initial creation of our sword, where that was, right here on the sword, we're just going to add something to our X. So we'll just create it like, I don't know, 5 pixels off that one point, and then it should be good. Yes, yes, yes. Alrighty, I think that's about all we have time for. This is kind of a baseline project for you guys to do a whole lot of cool stuff. As you guys can see, if you want to create like super awesome new levels, you can just go up to your tiles. You can create as many layers as you want and just like go crazy with all this stuff. There's like a whole lot of cool things you can do. You know, you can put banners in places, you can put, you know, tables or whatever else. And then if you wanted to make them not pass through, you just take these things and assign them to wherever you want. You could even just like shrink it down to one box, so you just like move 1 boxes around. And we created a very, very simple dungeon game that works with not a lot of code.